something about Philly, man, that just got that. You got to have grit in order to be able to be a part of this team.
You want to play hard and give everything you have for people in this building, the people of the city. Just playing here, I feel like it always brings out the best version of yourself. I feel like it really amplifies you into what you're meant to become.
And the love for one another is what carries it to the next level.
And the whole day, 4 quarters, man, that's all it takes. Do our job. Like I told you last, we come early. It ain't got to be close.
It don't matter. We just be us. Execution is the key, man. And these boys can't mess with us when we all the way.
Welcome to the Eagles pregame show, live on Philly Sports Reports, brought to you by SeatGeek. Use code Philly Sports Reports, take $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Eagles taking on the 3-12 Cardinals today. Happy New Year's Eve. Happy New Year to everybody. I am Ben Golston. I'm joined by Sam Hyde. Sam, Jonathan Gannon returns to the link today.
Yeah, this was a game that was much anticipated all off-season, but now it seems like a lot of people have kind of forgotten about the Jonathan Gannon aspect because of how kind of poorly, I guess you could say, the Eagles have been playing over the last 8 to 10 weeks. But they still, this game has a lot of stakes for the Eagles outside of the Jonathan Gannon revenge game. So it's going to be a big one for the Eagles and definitely one that they need to come up on top. And if they beat Jonathan Gannon in the process, that's a little bit of added incentive to this game.
Yeah, but with how the Eagles have been playing as of recently, it's hard to predict much with anything going on, even against the 3-12 Cardinals. Your quarterback matchup today is Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts. We'll start with Jalen Hurts. He's 11-4 this season, 3,636 passing yards, 65.5 completion percentage, 20 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, passer rating of 89.6. 576 rushing yards and 15 rushing touchdowns. Hurts looked better against the Giants. What do we expect against the Cardinals today?
Yeah, I think you said it last week. Jalen definitely looked better than he has over the last few weeks against some better competition, but the Giants do not have the greatest defense, so that definitely played a factor into how he played. I think one of the biggest things with Jalen is that he's still really struggling with pressure. The Giants are one of the best teams in the NFL at bringing pressure, and Wink Martindale really loves to bring those blitzes and kind of get quarterbacks off their spot. We all know Jonathan Gannon doesn't really blitz that much, as a lot of Eagles fans know extremely well, but with any pressure, Jalen seems to just get flushed out of the pocket way too early. He drops his eyes way too early and still just wants to roll out to that right side and he does try to make plays while on the run, but still, I think that I noticed it a lot yesterday watching the Cowboys-Lions game, and I don't want to give Dak Prescott any kind of compliments at all, but one of the things you saw was with the Lions getting pressure in his face, he stood in the pocket and made some great throws while there was pressure in his face, and that's just something really that we haven't seen from Jalen all year, and I think that that's something that he still needs to be working on as we go into the playoffs. We're going to be facing some better defenses. And then last week, there was a lot of stuff going around on social media where they showed the passing charts from the Eagles offense last week, and there was just 2 passes over the middle of the field. Everything was outside the numbers, and that's something that we saw early on in Jalen's career when the coaching staff didn't really trust him to throw over the middle of the field. And, obviously play calling comes a big factor of where the ball is going to be going, but it also could mean that they don't trust Jalen to throw the ball over the middle of the field. I mean, so far this season, like you said, he has 14 interceptions. I mean, he's been turning the ball over. Even last week, it wasn't his fault, but still another turnover. Him and the offense have been turning the ball over at an incredible rate this season, and the middle of the field is where the ball really can be put in harm's way. So I think it's super interesting that there was only 2 passes go in the middle of the field. Like I said, we'll never know if that was Jalen. We'll never know if that's the coaching staff. We'll never know if it's a combination of the two, which I probably believe that it's both. But the Eagles definitely need to use the middle of the field against this Cardinals defense. The Cardinals defense allows 26.9 points per game. That's 31st in the NFL this season. So the Eagles offense should definitely be expected to put up a lot of points. I think this is definitely a game that they should be expected to put up in the 30s in points. The Cardinals defense is really, really bad. They have Budda Baker, but besides that, they don't really have much. Their pass rush is horrible. They are a team that can be ran on. Their defense just does not have a lot of talent at all. So I think that this is definitely a game that we should expect the Eagles offense to have a big game, and they really need to utilize all of the field, because if they're only using outside of the numbers, 1, that's going to lead to defenses knowing where the ball exactly is going to go, and 2, it just opens up the offense so much more to different plays when you can, start utilizing the whole field. So that's definitely some stuff we should expect to see today.
All right, we move on to the Cardinals quarterback, Kyler Murray, who is questionable all week with the sickness, but he will play. He actually came to the stadium today wearing a Sidney Crosby jersey, so that was kind of interesting. He's 2-4 this season, 1,305 passing yards, 62.3 completion percentage, 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, a passer rating of 81.9. Kyler Murray, I mean, he is what he is. For number 1 overall pick, hasn't really lived up to it. What should we think to see from the Cardinals offense today, who will be without Marquise Hollywood Brown, who just went on the IR with a season-ending heel injury? What should we expect from that offense today against the Eagles defense?
Yeah, the Cardinals' biggest strength is definitely running the ball on offense. Like you said, Kyler Murray, former number 1 overall pick by the Cardinals a few years back. And like you also said, he hasn't exactly lived up to those number 1 pick expectations. Some of that is his fault with his play and some of his off-the-field issues, but some of it is the fault of the Arizona Cardinals for just not putting a lot of talent around him. One guy that they tried to put a lot of talent around him with was Hollywood Brown, like you just mentioned, but even he has not lived up to the expectations. He was traded for a first-round pick the same year that the Eagles traded for A.J. Brown for a first-round pick, so it's pretty obvious to see which trade has worked out better, as Marquise Brown only had 574 receiving yards this season. The Cardinals offense as a whole just does not have a lot of talent. Their best player is Trey McBride, their tight end, probably from a pass-catching standpoint. He's one of the big reasons why Zach Ertz asked for a release from the Cardinals. And then James Conner, their running back. He's former Steelers running back. He's a touchdown machine, as I'm pretty sure he led or was very close to the league lead in touchdowns a few years ago. That's where their strength is on offense. That's where they're going to try to exploit the Eagles defense. But make no bones about it, Kyler Murray can definitely beat you with his legs. Just like Jalen Hurts, he's extremely fast, extremely good at getting outside the pocket, and extremely good at making plays outside the pocket. Last year, when the Eagles played there, the Eagles had a Jake Elliott field goal at the end of the game that won the game, or I believe it was that. It was a very close game where Kyler was able to make a few plays.
That was Dicker the kicker that won that game.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So that was Dicker the kicker. Yeah.
Yeah. So Murray made a few plays in that game to kind of keep them in. And I mean, this Eagles team lost to Drew Lock, who obviously is not a very good quarterback, and Kyler Murray is definitely better than Drew Lock. So anything can happen, but the biggest way to keep him in check is to keep him inside the pocket, make sure he's not running around, make him make plays from inside the pocket, and you'll have a pretty good day. But to beat this Cardinals offense and to stop this Cardinals offense, you have to start with stopping the run.
Stopping the run, indeed. Let's move on to some notable matchups. Week 17, there are 2 weeks left. With the Cowboys win yesterday, the Eagles now control their own destiny in the NFC East. And also, if they want the 1 seed, they have to win out and need a 49ers loss. So, the Eagles need to win today. What are some notable matchups?
Yeah, so I have 3 notable matchups that I think can really dictate this game from whether or not the Eagles will win or if the Cardinals can pull off an upset. These are why. The first one, like I already mentioned, Trey McBride versus Kevin Byard. We've seen when the Eagles have played good tight ends so far this season, they've pulled Byard down and have him cover the tight ends. With Avonte Maddox back this week, it'll be interesting if they still employ that same kind of philosophy of having Byard cover the tight ends. Obviously, Maddox is kind of a smaller flat corner, excuse me, and he's just kind of getting his feet back wet after coming off IR. So Trey McBride has been a great receiver for them so far in his rookie season. Zach Ertz, like I talked about a little bit already, asked to be released because he wanted to go join a contender, but also because he wasn't really getting a lot of play, a lot of catches, a lot of targets. McBride so far this season has 743 receiving yards. He's going to be a very good player in this league going forward. And if there's one pass catcher on offense that can hurt the Eagles, it's definitely McBride. So it's just going to be really interesting to see how the Eagles try to cover him if they do use Byard. And like I said, Byard has done a good job against tight ends. And ever since coming over after that first week where he was kind of learning the system, he's been playing a lot better. Paris Johnson Jr. versus Hassan Reddick. Paris Johnson Jr. was their first-round pick last season. He's had a very up-and-down season where some weeks he'll go 40 snaps without allowing a pressure, and he'll look like an all-pro in the making, and then some weeks he'll really struggle. CBS Sports has him ranked as the 20th best player that came out of the first round this year. So he's had an up-and-down year, few good games, few bad games. He has gone against a lot of elite pass rushers, which he has struggled with a little bit. And Hassan Reddick is really the only guy on the Eagles defensive line outside of Fletcher Cox that's really making any plays. Hassan Reddick back over double-digit sacks again this season. But just about everyone else on the Eagles defensive line outside of Fletch has really had a down year, especially in the last few weeks. So it'll be interesting. Haas has kind of been that guy who's been the one consistent guy of getting sacks. And I think one of the biggest things that we've seen out of Reddick so far this season that's an improvement from last is that he's been really good at stopping the run. We saw that last week with some really nice plays against Saquon Barkley to get him in the backfield. So we just need Hassan Reddick to kind of win his matchups against the rookie and kind of just, like I said, stop the run and then keep Kyler Murray in the pocket. And then the last one I got is James Conner versus Shaq Leonard. We don't really know who the other starting linebacker is going to be here for the Eagles today, or else I would have said James Conner versus Eagles linebackers. But Shaq Leonard played one of the best games, if not the best game by an Eagles linebacker all season last week. He led the team in tackles. He had a sack. He really kind of looked not exactly like old Shaq Leonard, but he looked like the player the Eagles were hoping to get with some flashes there. So hopefully he can continue that. And like I said, the Cardinals are really going to want to run the ball today. The Eagles defense has been bad at stopping the run over the past probably 9 weeks. So if Shaq Leonard's playing like he did against the Giants and against Saquon last week, it's going to be a slow day for James Conner and definitely a good day for the Eagles defense.
Yeah, the Eagles starting linebackers today, they'll be Shaq Leonard and Nicholas Morrow based on pregame alignment. Ben Van Sherman and Brandon Smith will come off the bench if needed. So those are your starting linebackers today. We'll get to the inactives in a little bit, but let's go to the SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the sponsor of the show. As always, they have been all season. And thank you to SeatGeek. Of course, it's the easiest app to buy your tickets to anything. Sports, concerts, comedy shows, you name it. All you got to do, download the SeatGeek app. Use code Philly Sports Report. Save $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase with code Philly Sports Report. Click on the link in the description on YouTube to download the app and save some money. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring the SeatGeek Standout Stars. For today's game, Sam Hine will provide you with those. Sam.
Yeah, so before I get to the standout stars, I'll say a little bit about SeatGeek as I went through the whole process of using the code, and it was super easy. Got to see a nice Sixers 20-point win last week in Orlando. Super easy to use the app, super easy to get really good tickets. The tickets got delivered to us immediately. It was super easy getting into the stadium, so definitely a very easy process for SeatGeek, and then we got to see a nice 20-point Sixers blowout down here in Orlando. But for the standout stars for today's game, I'm going to go my first one as Keely Ringo. He's played really well over the last few weeks, filling in for Darius Slay in his first career interception last week. I believe I heard on WIP this week them say that he's the youngest Eagle to ever get an interception, or second youngest. He's one of the youngest Eagles to ever get an interception, that's for sure. And, coming out of Georgia, being drafted in the fourth round, he's had some pedigree playing at Georgia, but getting drafted in the fourth round, a lot of people thought he could have gone earlier in the draft, and I think we're seeing that he definitely has the talent to play in this league. So I think he's going to have another really good game today. The Cardinals don't have great wide receivers, so I think that could definitely help him look a little bit better. But I think that with his play over the last few weeks, and if he continues that over the next couple of weeks when the Eagles get Darius Slay back, I think it could definitely I think you could definitely have the Eagles questioning themselves a little bit of who should be the starting cornerbacks going into the playoffs if Ringo can keep it up, and I think he will. And then my second one, I'm going to go with A.J. Brown. It's been kind of a weird week for A.J. Brown as he didn't speak to the media last week after the Eagles' victory over the Giants, where he said, if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything at all. So, it's kind of a little bit of a weird statement. And then he put out a video of Kevin Durant talking about the media, about how he wishes he could just go out and hoop. This is Kevin Durant saying that he wishes he could just go out and hoop and doesn't have to talk to the media and all this kind of stuff. So it's been definitely a very weird week for A.J. Brown. There's been a lot of speculation about what is going on with him, why he is feeling the way that he is and what he is feeling that way about. No one really knows, but all I hope is that he's going to take that anger or whatever it is out on the Cardinals defense today. We haven't had one of those massive A.J. Brown games in a long time, and this week is definitely prime for one of those as the Cardinals don't have a great defense. So I think A.J. is going to put on a show today and hopefully gets another big game and gets atop the Eagles receiving yards again for the franchise record.
Yeah, that would be nice. Haven't seen a lot from A.J. Brown in a little bit. Today's a good day to pick that up. A weird 1 o'clock start for the Eagles. It's been forever since we've had a 1 o'clock start. This is probably the last one we're going to get this year. So it's very nice to have a 1 o'clock start. Let's look at the inactives for today. The Cardinals, Blake Whiteheart, Cameron Thomas, Trevor Nowatzki, Carter O'Donnell, and oh man, this name's interesting. I'm just going to call him Knight, the safety. They're inactive. Let me spell this name. Quantrezz.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
Never heard of them before.
For the Eagles, Tanner McKee, Zach Cunningham, Marlon Tuipulotu, whatever. Bradley
Tuipulotu.
Bradley Roby and Darius Slay are inactive, which means Avonte Maddox is back today, his first game in about 3 months, and Rashad Penny is active. Remember him? It's been very strange. He hasn't played at all, but those two are back today. How will that help the Eagles?
Yeah, so having Avonte back is massive. He's one of the he's one of the premier slot cornerbacks in the NFL. His problem so far in his career has been staying healthy, unfortunately, as he is undersized. But when he is in there playing for the Eagles, he is an absolute ball hawk. He's great at disrupting passes. He's great in coverage too. He started out with the Eagles as a safety, but they moved him into that slot corner spot, and ever since then he has really played well. Hopefully he'll be able to stay healthy for the rest of the year, and obviously the Eagles have a lot of faith in him staying healthy, because especially today, and I think obviously by Bradley Roby being inactive, that means Avonte is going to play all the snaps, so he must be completely back to 100%, so that's very good, as we could potentially have all three of our starting cornerbacks back for the first game of the playoffs, if you want to count, if they don't change around Bradbury and Ringo. But with Slay potentially coming back, or supposed to come back for the first game of the playoffs, and then getting Maddox back today, that's definitely massive. And then, Rashad Penny being active is definitely interesting. They're carrying Swift, Penny, Gainwell, and Boston Scott today. So, Rashad Penny has not gotten any work this season, and when he has, he's not looked very good. So it'll be really interesting to see how they use him today. I'm not really sure how they'll use him because they have not shown him at all this season, but they obviously have some sort of a plan for him today, or else they wouldn't have used a roster spot on him.
Yeah, maybe the Eagles are going to run the ball. Maybe they heard the fans last week, and they're going to start running the ball a lot today, so that'll be interesting. The gamblers are us bets. The Eagles are minus 12.5. The over is 48.5. And Sam, as always, has some locks of the day. Sam, you're back in Florida?
Yes, back in Florida, so I can look at these lines. So I do have some good lines for you. But starting with that, I saw that the Eagles, the line actually moved to Eagles minus 12.5. At least that's what it is down here in Florida. I don't know what it is on these other sports books back home. And down here it's Eagles 12.5, and I just cannot lay those points with the Eagles. As much as I want to, I cannot pull myself to do it. The Eagles have not won a single game by 14 or more points all season long. So 12.5 is very close to that 14 number. So it seems like no matter what, they make all these games interesting. I do think the Eagles are going to win today, and we'll get to that later, but I do not like them on the 12.5 number. And then for the over-under, I do like the under in this game. I don't know. It just seems like every game, just like all these games, just feel like the same to me. And while I do think the Eagles are going to score a decent amount of points, I do like the under. And then some locks I have for this week. I got A.J. Brown, anytime touchdown. I talked about him in my standout stars. I like to double down on my standout stars with a little bit of a bet there to back it up. So I think A.J. is going to have a big game today. So I like him for a touchdown. And then a few numbers I like. DeAndre Swift over 68.5 rushing yards. Last week, Swift went above 90 rushing yards. And I think the Eagles, one of the biggest weaknesses of this Detroit, I was thinking about last night, Arizona Cardinals team is their defensive line. Their defensive line is really, really bad. So I think the Eagles are going to try to run the ball today. And I think Swift is going to go over that number. And then even though I do think A.J. Brown is going to have a big game today, it's hard to deny what Devontae Smith has been doing over these last few games. And this whole season, really, he's a great wide receiver, and his number, at least here, is 56.5. I think he goes over that today. It seems like just about every game he's getting close to that 100-yard mark over the last 8 weeks. So I do like Devontae over that number as well.
There you go, your Gamers RS bets. Thank you to Gamers RS. Go listen to that podcast on Philly Sports on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. The keys to the game today, Sam. Cardinals might be the worst team the Eagles play all season, but with the mistakes the Eagles have been having, it probably won't be easy. What are the keys to winning today?
Yeah, so the first key I have is for the Eagles offense to utilize the whole field. One of the things I talked about earlier in the show is about how they were really only using the outside the numbers area of the field. And obviously Jonathan Gannon, if it's all over Twitter and all Eagles fans see it, Jonathan Gannon and his defensive staff has seen it. And as bad as the Cardinals defense is, if you know where the ball is going to go on 98% of the plays, you have a pretty good chance of stopping them and creating turnovers. So I think that the Eagles just need to utilize the whole field. One of the things I talked about last week that can go into this is just kind of taking what's there, not always having to take these deep shots, and giving the Eagles players a chance to make plays with the ball in their hands. I think we saw an example of that last week when the Eagles threw about a 15-yard, 8 to 18-yard pass to Devontae Smith over the middle of the field, actually, and he took it 35 yards for a touchdown. Our offensive weapons are special, and our offensive weapons are especially special when they have the ball in their hands with space. So I think the Eagles really need to utilize that in the offense today. Keep contain on Kyler Murray. Like I said before, when I talked about Kyler, his way that he'll hurt you is running outside the pocket, picking up those third and longs with his legs, making plays from extending them outside the pocket. He was the number 6 overall pick by the Oakland Athletics in the MLB draft a few years ago. So he has a great arm, and he can throw the ball at all different angles. One of the things we've seen from Jalen is that he's really only good on the run moving to his right, because obviously that's going to be his dominant side. Kyler Murray, former outfielder, like I said, first-round pick of the MLB, he can throw going to his left across his body. He can throw going to his right. So there's really not one way to force him. If you're going to let him out of the pocket, you have to just keep him contained. And the Eagles' defensive line has not been good recently. They can't get sacks. They can't get pressure. So they, at least if they're not going to do that, they need to just keep contained on Kyler. And then the last one, play a clean game. Turnovers, fumbles, interceptions, penalties, blow-ups on the sideline, that all comes into account when I'm talking about playing a clean game. One of the underrated things with the Eagles is that they've had a lot of penalties and a lot of penalties on the offense. Jalen Hurts kind of talked about it, and so did Jordan Mailata, where they are blaming the fans for being too loud on offense for all their false starts on offense. That's ridiculous. First off, they're not as loud as they are on defense, and they're not even that loud on offense. They're just trying to find an excuse for anything that they're doing wrong right now, and they're blaming the fans for being too loud and saying, well, you're supposed to only be loud on defense. Everyone in Philadelphia knows that, and no Eagles fan is intentionally trying to be loud when the Eagles are on the field to try to mess them up. So the Eagles need to be able to just, not turn the ball over, not have all these terrible penalties with Kelsey false starts moving his head or, holding penalties or whatever it is. And then on the sidelines, they all just need to play as a team, come together. There's all these blow-ups on the sidelines this season, especially last week, Nick Sirianni and Hassan Reddick and Devontae and AJ, and then it leads to these guys not talking for a week. And the vibes are just kind of bad right now, even though they did get a win last week. So the Eagles just need to play a clean game of football today, and I think they'll come out with a win.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, when a team starts to go the way the Eagles are, it's really hard to piece them back together. But hopefully, they can get pieced back together this week. Hopefully, it'll bring something. So the Foco Sam Hine Fit Check. Go to this link right here. It's in the description and YouTube to go save 10% off your Foco purchase. So Sam, what are we rocking today on New Year's Eve?
All right, so I've had this jersey picked out for this game since I saw that it was on the schedule because it's one of if not my favorite Eagle of my lifetime. So, but he unfortunately is not with the Arizona Cardinals anymore as he asked for a release. But I've had this jersey picked out for so long that I decided to still wear it. So today I'm wearing the Super Bowl 52 champions Zach Ertz jersey. It's unfortunate that Zach obviously got traded away. I was super devastated when that happened, and then went to the Cardinals, and I was all excited to have him come back and go back to Philly and get his, standing ovation and his video tribute, and would have been a really good day for Zach as he's one of the all-time Eagles, if not, he's one of the best Eagles of all time. Caught the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl, and he wanted to go to a contender and get released, but nobody seems to want him, which is unfortunate. But we love you in Philly, Zach, and had to rock him even though he's not with the Cardinals anymore.
Yeah, Zach Ertz, one of my favorite Eagles. I mean, Jason Kelsey tops my list, but Ertz is right up there with him. So I was hoping to see him today and maybe even in an Eagles uniform again, but just not meant to be. Let's move on to the game predictions. Put your predictions in the chat. What are we feeling for today with the Eagles, Cardinals? Sam, how we feeling?
All right. Like I said earlier, I do think the Eagles are going to win this game, but I do not think that it's going to be any sort of blowout. I think that somehow, some way, in some new fashion, the Cardinals will make this a game, but I do think the Eagles will pull out in the end. I think the Eagles are going to win this game 27-20.
Yeah, it's a little closer than I was thinking. I do think this game's going to be a little closer than people think. It's just so hard to predict a blowout right now with how this Eagles team is playing. So I think the Eagles are going to win. I think it's going to be, let's go 24-14, as I think. So a double-digit victory. Not necessarily a blowout win that you want over the Cardinals, but just it's going to be some new mistakes again this week that'll hold them back, and it just seems like it's the same thing every week. So 24-14 is what I'm going with today.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, we didn't get to touch on this because we don't have a lot of time until kickoff, but the Eagles, they need this win. They need the win next week to get the NFC's number 2 seed. If they win out, they get the number 2 seed, and we'll host 2 playoff games if they win that first one. So definitely doesn't, at this point, honestly, I really want to see them dominate, but if they dominate the Cardinals, they dominate the Giants, I don't really think it's going to change how I view this team going into the playoffs because they're not doing it against any good competition. So just win the game at this point, get that 2 seed, and we'll figure it out when the playoffs get here.
Yeah, we're going to see what happens in January. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Follow us on YouTube, X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Threads. Go to phillysportssports.com after the game for Sam Hine's recap of hopefully a win today. We'll catch you next week for Week 18, the final game of the regular season. Go Birds!
Go Birds!